Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Strategy Factory. I am Lucas Goransky, and today I'll be talking with Megan Bowen, COO and CCO at Refine Labs. Megan, good afternoon. How are you? And thank you for your time.
Hi, Lucas. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. How are you today?
I'm really good. I'm in Sydney, Australia. It's a very weird day, but I'm super excited about our conversation. And the first question that I usually ask everyone is, who's Megan Bowen?
Absolutely. Let me give you my quick intro. I've had a 15-year career in the New York City startup scene. Have always been at B2B SaaS tech startups. I started my career as an account manager at an education technology company and did that for 7 years. Then I went to a company called ZocDoc, started as a customer support agent, but then was able to build out their post-sale team. So that was my first opportunity to build a team from scratch. Then went to Grubhub Seamless, built out their B2B account management team there as well. Went to Managed by Q, yet again, built another account management team. But at that company, my scope really increased. And I started as the director of account management, but then became the chief operating officer. That was where I really began to appreciate the world beyond customer success and account management, and how when you're thinking about building a company or managing a company, all of the teams are really critical: marketing, sales, success, operations, product, and really had a great appreciation for how all of those teams were really needed and how they had to play together really well in order for a company to be successful. After that, I was a CS executive at a company called Platters, and then most recently teamed up with Chris Walker at Refine Labs to build our company. So that's a quick rundown of my career.
Terrific. It's a terrific career, and I cannot even imagine what's coming next. Hopefully a lot more to go at Refine Labs. But surely, I guess, a lot of many projects also at the side. You have your own podcast, which is great, and I recommend everyone here to go and listen to it as well. And the reason why I wanted to chat with you today is I want to talk to you about growth. That's something you've been very involved for forever, growing teams, growing people, growing businesses. And in a recent post that you did on LinkedIn, I was reading about this idea of who needs to be the main driver of growth, and how sometimes we blame the marketing team, the sales team, or the CSM team, but it might come from a different angle. It might be either product or it might be the go-to-market strategy. So the first, I think, question I want to ask you is, what could be the growth block? What could be those growth blockers of a company?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've worked at so many different companies and startups at various stages and scales. And it's really interesting how if, particular growth targets aren't hit, whether, it's a marketing goal, a sales goal, a customer success goal, the blame usually rests on, one or both or all of those teams. And very rarely are people trying to truly identify what the root cause issue is of a business not being able to achieve growth targets. And so, I like to kind of categorize them in sort of 5 different factors or blockers that could be the issue. And so the first is sometimes the product or service isn't very good. And especially for an early stage company that's still really trying to figure out what that product or service is, sometimes it's just not good enough. And that needs to be acknowledged and addressed if that's the case. The second thing I would say is, in many cases, there's not clarity on what the ideal customer profile is. And what that results in is the marketing team, the sales team, the CS team trying to market, sell, and service all customers instead of your best customers. And that lack of focus can create a lot of issues and result in not achieving goals. I think the third is, and I realized this when I was at Managed by Q and kind of went from just running account management to then having the broader scope. Most companies don't really have a holistic go-to-market strategy. The marketing team makes their strategy, the sales team does theirs, the CS team does theirs, but there's nobody bringing it all together. And when that happens, it's pretty typical for those plans to be incompatible, in conflict with one another, or not actually supporting each other's sort of contribution to the customer journey. And the reality is your customer is experiencing your marketing, your sales process, your success process, and oftentimes that's skipped over. The fourth thing is, in my experience, and especially I've been in charge of building out account management and customer success functions, this usually happens too late. This is something that needs to be prioritized really early on so that you can really be in touch with your customers. And so I often find that the customer success function is under-resourced, underfunded, and built out too late. And then the last thing, number 5, is really poor unit economics. It's really easy for a startup, especially with a lot of funding, to not really look at their customer acquisition cost or their contribution margin. When you actually do the math, sometimes every customer that's acquired, they're losing money for potentially a significant amount of time. And there are reasons to potentially do that for periods of time, or as you're, kind of getting your product ready to go to market, but that's not a sustainable strategy. And so I find that typically it usually is one of those 5 key factors or blockers that really contributes to a company not meeting growth targets and not being able to scale effectively.
That makes total sense, and I can look back at my career and see how in different companies we had probably this different problem from different of them, like one of these different angles. And I have 2 follow-up questions. I'm going to start with the easy one, which is, who should be that cohesive glue that you were saying, right? You were saying everyone, usually every single department might have their own strategy, but we're not all doing that together. And who should be the sheriff to make sure that everything's working right? Should it be the COO? Should it be the CEO, or should it be someone there doing that and have their own title as a cohesive glue?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a lot of titles today, but I think really it needs to be either the COO, Chief Operating Officer, CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, or CCO, Chief Customer Officer. Okay. But any one of those roles, they need to be managing all of those functions. Potentially it could be the CEO, especially at an earlier stage company, until they've built out their leadership team. The problem today, though, is very often there is no one leader that actually manages all those functions, right? And really, at the end of the day, especially if you have a CMO, a CRO, a CCO, maybe you have all those roles at a more mature company, maybe it does have to be the COO or the CEO. So I think that's a challenge, because I think, to use the word silos, right? Like, it's very common for all of these teams to operate in those silos, and it causes a lot of the issues that we just described.
Yeah, no, completely. And I also think that the silos are probably exacerbated now with this new reality where most of the companies are working remotely, and it's harder to find those spaces to work together in conjunction. No, that's great. And I think the other question that I had before is, how do I identify which is my problem in my company? So you've mentioned these 5 potential places where the problem can arise, but which one is mine? How do I map it out?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the first thing is, I think it's really easy, especially for, early stage founders or companies, to kind of be drinking their own Kool-Aid and in love with their own product. And so I think talking to customers directly about whether your product is actually meeting expectations, driving the outcomes that they expected, you need to have an honest evaluation of the state of your product. So customer surveys or customer research is a great tactic to uncover if that could be the problem. The unclear ICP, if you think everybody can be your customer, then this is your problem. Because that's just not true. And I think kind of skipping ahead a little bit to the fifth one, poor unit economics, I really recommend that companies do a segmentation analysis where they actually create segments of all of their current customers and begin to analyze any of the data points that they have. I've done this at a couple of companies. And so some of the things that I'll look at are, if I segment my customers based on size or stage or industry, let me look at some key metrics. Let me look at NPS or CSAT or some type of customer satisfaction metric across all those cohorts, which are high, which are low, right? Let me look at retention rates across those cohorts. Let me look at average contract value across those cohorts. Let me look at product adoption across those cohorts. Let me look at the actual profit margins and contribution margins across those things. And what you'll find is there's going to be some segments of customers that are unhappy, unprofitable, low ACV, right? So if you do that analysis, you should be able to see certain segments rise to the top. These are the happiest customers, they're profitable, they stay with us the longest, they use our product the most, right? So that's a very tactical way that you can do a segmentation analysis to really identify that ICP. It's normal for your ideal customer profile to change over time. So that's an exercise that you should be doing every 6 to 12 months, especially as a young company, and that's okay. And if your ICP evolves, then your go-to-market strategy can evolve too, but you should start specific and grow versus try to go wide. That's my recommendation.
That's great. No, that's perfect, and it's great to identify and have those elements to try and to do that test on. Okay, is it this one? Oh, I think this one is fine. Is it? Am I in love with my product? Oh, maybe it's my product. Or is it about understanding how we're going to market? Oh, but maybe this is the one. And that also is the perfect segue to my next question, which is in this post that I was reading, you talked a lot about this go-to-market 3.0. Can you explain us a little bit more about this concept holistically and how you came up, if it's yours, how did you actually came up with this idea?
Yeah, absolutely. And so basically what I'm positing here with this go-to-market 3.0 is the reality is, I have been working in startups for almost 20 years now, and it's fascinating to me how a lot of the things that I was observing at the very beginning of my career haven't really changed with respect to how people think about executing marketing and sales and customer success. But the world has changed a lot. And companies in many cases are not acknowledging the shift in how buyers buy and what they want and what they need. And so as a result of, really adopting these old tactics that, yes, they did work 15 years ago, but things are different now. So you need to change with the times. So, over the course of the last couple of decades, we've had things like predictable revenue, and we've really created almost this over segmentation of the process, right? Like marketing has to just blast your total addressable market and get a bunch of emails and leads and then give them to your SDR. And then they're going to make a ton of calls and schedule a bunch of meetings. And then your AEs are going to have these meetings, and probably only a handful of deals will actually close. And then the CS person comes in. And it's just gotten out of control, in my opinion. And so I almost feel like you need to just throw all of that out the window and say, acknowledging what is happening today in the world, what is the way that a B2B company should go to market? What is the right strategy? And I think that your strategy has 3 primary components that you need to think through: awareness, acquisition, and retention. And those 3 steps need to be thought through from the lens of the customer, not the lens of the company. So number 1, awareness. This is about marketing. This is about communicating to your market and your buyers where they already spend their time, and develop compelling messaging and content and information that they want to consume, so that when they are ready to buy a product like yours, they already know about you and they'll come to you, right? It's that simple. Acquisition. This is where you want to, actually convert someone to a customer. And today, all of this over segmentation and over complicated sales processes, people are getting in their own way. Your sales process should be responsive, consultative. You shouldn't be trying to convince every single potential customer to sign with you. You should be evaluating if it's going to be a good fit and making it easy for them to buy, easy for them to book a demo, easy for them to find pricing on your website, easy for them to answer their own questions, easy for them to see what other customers you work with so they can ask what they think of you. And so it's really, I think, stripping down a lot of the complexity and designing a buyer-centric sales process. And then retention. This is customer success. So you have to deliver on your promise to your customers. This is so easy. Companies forget about this. Like, they get the customer in the door, they just want to get the next new customer. Your product or your service has to deliver an outcome. And if you're able to deliver that outcome on a recurring basis, you will keep that recurring revenue. And if you have other things for them to buy so that they can improve or increase the value or the outcome, then they will buy more. Absolutely. It is easy as that. And everything that you need to do in your onboarding process and your, ongoing customer journey really needs to be focused on creating a great experience and driving the actual outcome. The whole reason that they bought your product in the first place, you have to deliver on that promise. So that is go-to-market 3.0.
It's great. It's super clear. It's super simple. I mean, there's this is kind of the short but very clear version of the awareness. There was the AIDA model, but then you have the retention, and then people being advocates for you. This is like a simple version, very clear. And I think the most important thing to highlight is how important it is for them to be also cohesive and to have a clear message. Because if you're over-promising in your awareness stage and in your decision stage, then when it comes to actually retention, it's not going to work out. Because if you're promising a lot of things that are not there, then the customer success team is going to be turned into the firefighters of the churn to make sure that nobody's leaving you. So obviously there has to be this idea where we're being very simple, clear, and we're very connected in the whole three. So no, that's fabulous. And I think how it seems so easy, but planning and executing a GTM 3.0, a go-to-market plan 3.0, it's probably not that simple. What are your recommendations or your strategies to share with everyone watching today?
Yeah, absolutely. So the strategy is simple, but the execution is difficult. Absolutely. And I think that that's the point. I think the best strategies are actually very clear, focused, simple, and straightforward. But what actually matters is executing against the strategy to drive the result that you want, right? So I think that there are 5 kind of core elements to execution of go-to-market 3.0 that I'll walk you through right now. So the first is your organizational design. I talked a little bit about kind of the over segmentation of all of these roles working with the customer, but you shouldn't be just borrowing an org chart from the last company that you were at, or from Salesforce or any big company that exists today. You need to just actually think about what are the roles and responsibilities, what are the key outcomes that you want to drive, and what are the teams and the roles within those teams that you need to drive those outcomes. It's really fascinating if you think about just building something from the ground up without assuming that things need to be built in a certain way. Oh, I'm a sales leader, I must have an SDR team, I must have an AE team, I must have a sales engineer, or all of these people. Sure, maybe you do need some or all of those roles, but don't assume it. Actually use critical thinking and common sense to do so. This first step is really tied to the second step as well, which is goal setting. I think when you actually begin to set your goals, that can really guide and dictate and help influence the org design. But the main challenge and the main common issue that I see with goal setting is people set goals arbitrarily because they've made promises to investors that they're going to grow by a particular rate. And so when goals are cascaded down into the organization, I've used Cascade, that they usually are backed into. So, oh, we closed, $1 million in revenue last year, but this year we'd like to close 7 million. So if we need to close 7 million, then we need to close, X million per quarter. And then you're like, we've never done that before. We're probably not going to now. Like, how did you even get there? And those unrealistic goals really create a lot of pressure on teams to be really short-sighted and make poor decisions that might potentially allow them to hit a goal in the short term, but that is not going to work in the long term. I recommend any new company, you really want to go slow to go fast. Like, start small. Like, you need to build up the momentum, and then you will get to the point where that's going to begin to accelerate at an exponential level. But you need to be really smart about that, not overpromise goals to investors. And if you can do the right thing from the beginning and play the long game, you will get that growth curve that everybody wants. The third thing is marketing. And so this is where a lot of companies really are, again, continuing to use marketing tactics from a decade ago. Really what you want to focus on are, how do I build awareness and educate my target market on what I do? And really today, that's done through content creation and sharing that through social channels, through LinkedIn, through Facebook, Instagram, Slack communities, word of mouth. That's how people make buying decisions today. That's how people get educated on what's out there. And so you have to focus on meeting your buyers where they're at and giving them information. And the information needs to be interesting and relevant and entertaining so that they actually consume it. Sales. And so this is talked a little bit about this earlier, but like the key to nailing this is you need to focus on being responsive, building long-term relationships, and doing discovery that's qualification for long-term fit. Not over promising on features or it has to be an honest sales process. And then customer success is number 5. And so really the customer success is a big topic. Once they become a customer, then it's customer success for here on out. But really the thing you have to focus on is, how do I expedite and accelerate the time to value? How can I get my customer from day one to the thing that they wanted to get from my product or service as quickly as possible? And then how do I replicate that so that they're getting recurring value and then are happy to continue to pay me for that recurring value? So it all stems from focusing on driving that outcome or that result for your customer on a regular basis.
It's great. And I find it so interesting because everything that you're saying, it's connected to the thing that you were saying before, right? If you have achievable goals, challenging but achievable goals, then you're not going to be trying to sell anything to anyone that maybe you end up over promising something that you cannot deliver. So if you get that, we go back to the awareness acquisition and then retention model and how everything is connected. So that's fantastic. And I loved what you just said. Can you just repeat it one more time? Expediting the customer's time to value.
Time to value. Yes.
That is like spot on. I love it. No, that's great. Fabulous. And I think then the kind of, I think probably the last question that I have in regards to all of this that we've been talking about is, how do you get buy-in from your team to get there, right? Your team, probably even your investors, because we're talking about something that requires everyone to be aligned and in the same place. And usually investors want to drive growth as fast as possible. Team members want to do their work in the best possible way without compromising their quality. The management has ambitions, but at the same time is being pulled and pushed by both sides. So how do you get buy-in to make sure that everything fits in together?
Absolutely. So I think, the first, ingredient that's really critical for this whole strategy to come together in an organization is the leadership needs to be bought in, and they need to have the right mindset. And they need to take, and when I say leadership, I mean the CEO, the COO, right? The top leaders at the organization need to believe this. If they do not, this cannot happen. So they need to be bought in, and they need to manage up to their investors to be able to break down this and tell the story of how they are going to grow the company and the priorities that they are going to be focusing on, to do it the right way. When they're like, it really does start at the top, at the leadership level. That said, especially in a larger organization, this could require mobilizing a large number of people to really get aligned and execute effectively together. And so, really my like kind of rules to really get alignment, especially in a larger organization: you have leadership leading from the top, fully bought in, correct mindset, and they need to communicate a really compelling vision and mission to mobilize the team. People need to know why. Why am I here? What are we trying to do, right? That taps into people's motivation. If you get people bought into that, then they're much more willing to go where you want to lead them, if they believe that you're going to be leading them to the right place, right? So you need that leadership mindset at the top. You need that very compelling vision and mission. Then you need clarity and communication and documentation. Then someone needs to be the ringleader, right? Somebody needs to be putting the plans together, communicating the plans to the right people, holding people accountable, providing really clear expectations, providing feedback, right? Going one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, making sure everyone is coming along with them. And that's where the power of, strong execution comes into play. But when you really like break everything away, this is like leadership mindset, vision and mission, documentation, communication, project management, right? Celebrating wins, all of that. So this is a big topic. I could go on and on, but like those are the most important elements.
This will definitely be our next episode, and we'll definitely go over that. Megan, I think that is it from my end. I think we went through a lot of very clear content, again, very cohesive, and a very clear structure. I think everyone's going to take a lot out of this. Is there anything I should have asked you, or anything else that you would like to share with everyone today?
So I think for a closing thought, what I would say is I really encourage anybody listening to this, whether you're a CEO, a salesperson, a customer success manager, a marketer. I really think that one of the root cause issues of a lot of the challenges that businesses have today is they don't use critical thinking and common sense. And they're afraid to do things differently or to reject a status quo. And so I think that if you want to do anything great in this world, you need to be brave enough to try something new, to speak up, to not assume or accept everything that people tell you is the way it should be done, and really start to think for yourself. In a business context, put yourself in your customer's shoes and try to understand how they would want to engage with your business. And think about it that way. So many executives will say, oh, like, no one's going to like look at our ad on Facebook and come to us. But I'm like, how many hours a day do you spend on Facebook? Right? People literally will buy products in a way, but not think that their customers will follow the same path. The disconnect is amazing to me. But really what it comes down to is nothing that I said today was
rocket science.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It was all common sense. And just critically thinking about what is the right thing to do, not what is the thing that everybody else is doing. And so I encourage everybody, think for yourself, use common sense. Don't be afraid to try something new. Like if you want to do anything great in this world, you've got to be the first one that's willing to give something a shot.
Beautiful, Megan. I won't add anything to that because I think that's a perfect closure. So nothing else but to say thank you. Thank you for your time. And I wish that we can have a second one very, very soon.
Let's do it. This was fun, Lucas. Thanks for having me.
Have a great one. Bye-bye.